Welcome to the second day of America's Seed Fund Week. My name is Eric Page Littleford. I'm a Senior Technology Policy Advisor with the Small Business Administration, and I have the great pleasure of moderating today's esteemed panel. One of the things we're going to do today during this panel, inside the head of the Evaluator panel, is help you understand some of the common mistakes that you can avoid when making your SBIR, Sdtr proposals, and more importantly, to give yourself the best chance to be successful through this competitive process. To frame the discussion, let's just start with a few fundamentals. One, America's Seed Fund is a competitive process, and the core of that competitive evaluation is your proposal. Agencies are at least annually required to give opportunities to small businesses to provide proposals that can meet some of their technical needs. These go by various names. Some agencies will call these solicitations, others will call these broad agency announcements or notice of funding opportunities. Irrespective of the name, fundamentally what it does, it helps you understand the rules. It helps you understand the structure of the proposal, and more importantly, the evaluation criteria that agency is going to use to determine which proposals give them the best solutions. There are a few fundamental requirements with that evaluation criteria. At a minimal level, it's always going to touch on at least three things. One is going to be the technical innovation, including both the technical approach and the ability, if you are successful, to meet the particular needs that either the agency requested or that you're proposing. The other is going to be your people, the qualifications of the team you're going to be putting forward to perform that research and development. And last but definitely not least is also going to be the commercial potential of that particular innovation. So with that as a fundamental backdrop, let's go on and introduce our great panelists today who are going to help us with this discussion. So first I'll introduce them all individually and then ask each one to sort of describe a little bit about themselves, their agency, and to discuss the review process within their agency. So we have Dr. Larry Dressman, representing the Department of the Navy, Melinda Kaufman with the United States Department of Agriculture, and Genevieve Lin with the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. With that, I'm going to say if I can start with Melinda, then Larry, then Genevieve. If you could just introduce yourself, your agency, and discuss a little bit about the review process at your agency.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm Melinda Kaufman. I'm the USDA SBIR Sttr Program Coordinator. We are housed within the USDA in NIFA, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. And for our, I'll just slip in here, Eric, that we have added Sttr for FY23, so that's brand new to us, which we're very excited about. Our review process is a peer review process, so we convene panels for our 10 topic areas to review the proposals that come in, and we'll be talking about that in more depth as we move forward.
Thanks, Melinda.
Okay, Eric, thank you. I work for the Naval Sea Systems Command, commonly called NAVSEA, and specifically I work for a program acquisition office called Integrated Warfare Systems. And in short, what we do is we take surface ships, we take ships and turn them into warships. We put all the fun stuff on the ship that makes it a Navy vessel, the weapon systems, the radar systems, the electronic warfare systems, navigation systems, and things like that. I specifically work for the office that focuses on radar, electronic warfare, and new to our office is directed energy weapons systems. We typically have a panel of a team of 2 evaluate our SBIR proposals.
Thanks, Larry. Hi, everyone. I'm Genevieve Lind, and I am the SBIR Program Manager at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. At NOAA, our mission area covers climate, weather, oceans, and coasts. So from the surface of the sun to the bottom of the ocean, NOAA advances understanding of Earth's environment, climate, and weather. Our program is centrally managed and covers all of the NOAA mission. A little bit about our current review process. For fiscal year 22, we did add a letter of intent, which is a little bit outside the review process, but I think is relevant to this conversation. The letter of intent is required prior to submission of a full application, and we do provide feedback on whether a technology is likely to be a fit for the NOAA mission and the topics in the solicitation. And then letters of intent are evaluated and responded to, and full applications are then submitted. These applications are first screened for responsiveness, eligibility, and completeness. And applications that meet these criteria go through our full peer review process, where they are reviewed by up to 3 reviewers and evaluated on our review criteria.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you all for being here today. Really looking forward to the panel discussion. So I'm going to go a little off script just based on some of the responses we've had. And I'm going to start with you, Genevieve. So one of the things you mentioned is the letter of intent. So that's going to be a part of the process that they'll do before they submit their full proposal. If you can just speak a little bit more in terms of what some of the factors that motivated you all to sort of change that. And then the other thing I want to raise, and we'll sort of go around the horn, is you mentioned compliance. So if you can sort of maybe also speak to what that means when you say a compliance review.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are two main reasons we added the letter of intent to our review process. The first one is that writing a full application is a lot of work and a lot of effort, and we wanted to try to provide an opportunity to give some feedback to small businesses before they go through the whole process of submitting the full application. So with that, if you are completely off base and there's no, the technology just doesn't fit in the Noaa mission, or it's not going to meet the requirements of the NOFO, it gives us a chance to give you some feedback before you do all of the work to submit the application. The other part of it is that we do our reviewers are internal and external, and our mission is pretty huge. And so it's an opportunity for us to get a little bit of an advanced warning about what topics, what applications we're going to be getting in any given round, so we can try to get ahead of the game in terms of recruiting reviewers. In terms of our screening and our compliance and responsiveness, so it's a little bit more of the is it a fit for the mission? There is some of that. It's also, does a small business meet the eligibility requirements for the SBIR or Sdtr program? So we're checking that the principal investigator is employed at least 51% by the small business. Is the work appropriately contracted in the amount, so less than 1/3 for phase 1 and less than 50% for phase 2, and those types of criteria to make sure. And with that, it's also if a complete application has been submitted, so that all of the requirements have been met.
Thank you so much for that, Genevieve. I guess real quick before I come over to Melinda, for the audience, that's really a very interesting thing, the letter of intent. It's an opportunity to sort of get some early feedback before you have to invest the full amount of time and energy for a complete competitive proposal. I will note the Department of Energy's SBIR program also has a letter of intent. And then the National Science Foundation also has what they call their project pitch, which is a similar mechanism to sort of get some of that early feedback. So thank you for bringing that up, Genevieve. Melinda, when you were doing your introduction, you mentioned peer reviewed. All right, so help us understand, is that internal to USDA? Are those external panels? Help us understand what you mean when you say peer reviewed.
So across our 10 topic areas, each topic area convenes a panel of experts, a lot from academia, but also from industry and nonprofits and from federal labs at times. So we have a panel based on the number of proposals for each topic area. They convene a panel, and there's a external panel manager. And so the national program leader for the topic area is not is involved with the panel, but is not really a decision maker on the panel. And so those panelists convene anywhere, depending on the number of proposals for phase 1. It probably typically it's 2 to 3 day panel to review all the proposals and come up it's a pretty rigorous process they go through to decide which ones will be awarded.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, and Larry, you mentioned that typically you may have, say, 2 evaluators within, say, NAVC within the Navy. So one question actually from the audience that I will sort of generalize to respond. One thing, the Navy uses a nomenclature Teapot, so a technical point of contact, right? Often they are the author of, say, the problem statements, the topics that the Navy may seek solutions for as a part of the SBIR, Sdtr process. The question really is, are they also the evaluators And if you can comment on that, because sometimes some of the users believe there may be a disconnect between what the Teapot may tell them during the open period before a proposal comes in, and then maybe the feedback. So can you just sort of speak about the Teapot's role within the evaluation process within the Navy?
Sure. So it is not necessarily a given within the Navy that the TPOC is going to be one of the evaluators. And of course, we do not reveal to the companies either beforehand or after the fact who the evaluators were. They that's not revealed. Even if there's a debrief, the comments are given to the companies, but the contact information for the evaluators is not revealed to them. That said, very often the TPOC is often one of the evaluators. It's also in my organization, it is not necessarily the case that the TPOC is the topic author. I actually author a lot of the topics myself with feedback from the TPOC. Or sometimes I author the topic completely myself and then go find an appropriate TPOC. They often do evaluate. We typically select two evaluators. One is considered to be a mission specialist. So for example, if the technology is going to find its way into a electronic warfare system, the one evaluator will be selected because they have particular knowledge about the application of the technology. And then we try to find someone who's a technical specialist that actually has specific background in the particular technology itself. So for example, if we want a machine learning artificial intelligence algorithm that's going to go into an electronic warfare system, we try to have someone on the panel. One evaluator is an electronic warfare person, and the other person is a computer science type person who knows something, hopefully, about machine learning.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that. So we kind of touched on it, but why don't we just sort of go around the horn? And I will start with you, Larry, then Melinda, then Genevieve. Simple question.
Mm-hmm.
Who ultimately makes the decision? Who ultimately selects the winners of the proposals in your respective agencies?
That is our evaluators, okay? We used to have a system where we had two evaluators and a chairperson. Sometimes the chairperson could serve as one of the evaluators, and the chairperson's job was to formally adjudicate any disagreements and bring everybody together. We tend to do that informally now, but very seldom would anybody ever try to influence the evaluator. In fact, it's improper, and we do not influence the evaluators. We do try to coach the evaluators because not everybody has experience. There's always got to be a first-time evaluator, first time you're doing an evaluation, and I do a lot of the training on that, and sort of explaining to them what the role is, and sort of guiding them through any of the pitfalls of the evaluation process. But would be very reluctant to ever dispute one of the evaluators.
Melinda?
Sure. For those peer review panels, each proposal is read by 3 panelists. And so those 3 panelists come together and give their independent ratings, and then it's discussed and placed in a category. And then after all the proposals have been evaluated, they go back and re-evaluate based on the bigger picture once all the proposals have been gone through. And like Larry said, of course, our panelists, that their information is confidential. They aren't, who isn't revealed. Each proposal gets feedback, but it isn't identified to a certain panelist or group of panelists.
All right, Genevieve?
Yes, similar to Melinda and USDA, applications are independently reviewed and scored by the reviewers. We aggregate the scores and choose a line at which we decide the applications are technically superior. And then we look at that batch of technically superior applications within the context of the bigger picture and make our ultimate selections based on a list of criteria that is listed in the notice of funding opportunity, but includes diversity across topics. It also includes diversity across applicants and representation across the country or the investigators themselves. And then the recommendations are made by the program manager, myself, and ultimately funding decisions are made by the selecting officer, who's the director of our office.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. All right, so let's sort of transition a little towards the proposal preparation process. So a lot of the small businesses out there, they're wondering if this is a path they should go down. They're wondering how it's going to be to work with the federal government. So when they're considering putting together their proposal, simple question: do any of your agencies provide checklists, roadmaps, any type of guidance? I will just sort of open this up to whoever wants to respond.
Well, I'll jump in. We provide typically a guidelines in the BAA, in the solicitation, that tells the companies how long the proposal should be. We don't want somebody thinking that if they write a 100-page proposal, that's automatically better. So everybody's restricted to a certain page limit. As you mentioned, there's 3 sections that are mandatory that they have to address. We provide essentially a template as to what is to go into the proposal. So it's pretty straightforward. Then it really comes down to them, putting their best technical and technical foot forward in the proposal. So I think the entire government, I can say, tries to make this process exceedingly fair and even across the board.
Wonderful. Say, Melinda or Genevieve, would you like to add anything?
I would just say that, like Larry, our guidance is in our RFA. I'll probably repeat this over and over again, but the RFA really is the document to go to the request for applications. It's the RFA, and it's really, I acknowledge that it's dense and long, but that's because it's packed full of instruction. And so you can, download it and make it searchable. You can, of course, you can search it online. It's just easier to download it. And it really does answer almost any question you have. And so it gives guidance for what to put in your proposal, kind of a step-by-step guidance, and as well as a lot of other information of all the documents you will need to apply.
I'll just add to Melinda, RFA, NOFO, whatever you want to call it, ours is a NOFO, is a long form checklist, and I think that's a great resource. We also provide in the appendix of our NOFO a short checklist, just one page that lists the eligibility requirements and then the required documents and such, and that also can be found on our website as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think that must be very helpful to have that shorter, checklist. But I will encourage all of the audience, right? Whether it's, like I said, the notice of funding opportunity, the RFA, the solicitation, the broad agency announcement, whatever the agency calls it, it's basically outlining all of the rules. So if you're interested in participating in the SBIR Sdtr program, I do encourage you to review it and make your own checklist in terms of the key items you must have. So if they say we're only going to review 10 pages, they really mean 10 pages. Some agencies, if you go to 11 pages, may say we can't review it at all. Others will say we're going to ignore everything after the 10th page. So make sure you're paying attention to sort of the guidance and the structure. Real quick, I think we have another question here in the chat that I want to sort of utilize, because I think it gets to some of the challenges. So let's just say you have a 10-page requirement, no more than 10 pages for your phase 1 proposal. How should an applicant consider the trade-offs in terms of technical depth versus the overall other requirements? Discussing the technical depth of their technology, discussing the scientific foundation of what they're proposing versus the construction of the team versus how they're going to go about it. Do you all sort of give them templates? Do you provide guidance? How should they sort of think through that? And I'm actually going to start with you, Larry, just given your particular role and how it works within the Navy.
So I'll second what you said. First thing is read the application instructions, and that should be in there. Typically, and since I've never put in a proposal for an SBIR. I don't necessarily read all the instructions myself. That's up to the company to do that. But what we see are typically proposals that are predominated by the technical content. That is the overriding thing. I would say that's about 70% of the proposals that we see, 70% of the content, and then the strength of the team can be fairly brief, maybe 15%, and then the commercialization maybe only 5 to 10%, somewhere in those ranges. It doesn't take a whole lot to convey to the evaluators that you have a good team, that you have a qualified team. I don't need to necessarily see a list of every single publication that everybody in the company has ever submitted, and the commercialization has to be realistic, but it can be very short and to the point. I don't expect that to be a long discussion in the proposal, honestly.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Genevieve, would you like to add to that, or are we able to move on to the next question?
Yeah, I would just add that there's maybe a little bit of difference depending on what phase you're applying for. So in phase one, the commercialization component is going to be much shorter, but just in feasibility proof of concept testing. But at Noaa, in phase two, there's a completely separate and much more extensive commercialization portion of the application. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. And in phase one, the commercialization may be still in the early stages of ideation, but in phase two, it should be much more understood.
And I'll just add, we're much of what Genevieve said, it applies to USDA too. We do encourage letters of support in phase one. So from end users, from your ultimate customers, or from possible investors, letters of support are really important and are taken seriously by the panels. So it's important to have those. But commercialization takes a much smaller part of phase one than it does for phase two. In phase two, you're going to have a full commercialization plan. And phase one is, as both Larry and Genevieve said, the majority of it is about the scientific research, the technical research, the plan, and you have to include proprietary information in that.
Wonderful, wonderful. I would just add that, there is as all our panelists have identified, a difference in terms of the commercialization aspects in phase one versus phase two. The commercialization plan is actually a part of one of the requirements for a phase two proposal, which is going to be more expansive than what you're going to cover in phase one. So thank you all for bringing that up. I also like to encourage applicants, to get through phase one, understanding where the commercialization can lead, and then more fully addressing commercialization as you're going through that phase one process. So one question I have is from the audience: what are the odds of a solo founder startup to be granted an SBIR award? And I think what they're really getting to is, teams or companies, applicants, people applying are different sizes, right? It may be a 1 to 2 person operation. It may be a 10-person operation, up to a 500-person operation. And within the evaluation process, how does that come into play, if it comes into play? Maybe we can start with you, Larry.
So I'd say that size of the company is very seldom an overriding factor for us, as long as the work is scoped appropriately. If and that the time of the principal investigator is devoted to the project. If it's a 1 or 2 person company and both people in the company are listed as key personnel on the project, and they say, well, we're only working 25% time on this particular project, then that's a red flag. But it is not uncommon for very small companies, 3-4 people, to be very successful on our projects. It depends on the project. If there's a lot of manufacturing involved in the prototypes, then they have to have a plan. Did we do that in-house? Do we have the person to do that, or do we contract some of that out? But as far as the technical, what I'd call the technical guts of the project, it can be done by a very small team, even as small as 1 person. Yes.
Wonderful. Melinda?
I would add that I don't have the hard numbers in front of me, but I would say the majority of our small businesses are under 10 employees and can be, as Larry said, as few as a couple of employees or even one employee. Usually it's two or more, but they're very small companies. We welcome those applications. That's what SBIR and Sttr is kind of all about.
Exactly.
I would just add, similarly, we mostly work with small businesses under 10 employees. For us, from my perspective, it's most important that you have the scientific and technical expertise as part of your team that has the knowledge to be able to do the work that you're proposing to do. So if you're an artificial intelligence expert and you're wanting to apply the technology to harmful algal blooms, but you don't have any harmful algal bloom expertise on your proposal, it's probably not going to review well in that category. So just as long as the number of people doesn't matter, as long as you have the expertise that you need to do the work that you're proposing.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's start to move on to more of the evaluation process. So one question that we've had from the group, and I think this could be fairly quick, is there a standardized evaluation process for all of your proposals? Meaning, are everyone being viewed against the same litmus test, right? I think I know the answer to this, but we'll quickly go around the horn so you can answer yes or no, and then how. What is that litmus test? So Melinda, let's start with you, then Genevieve, then Larry.
Well, again, I'm going to refer you back to the RFA that has all the elements that are used in the criteria that the peer review panel process uses. So looking at in phase one, again, it's the foundation of phase one is proving or testing the feasibility, a proof of concept for your innovation or your scientific innovation or your technology. So that's for phase one. And so that's how the panel looks at it. They also look at the things that we've discussed before, the qualifications of your the people on your team, within your company, and your contractors or consultants. So those qualifications are important. And I would also just add, even in phase one, even though it's not focused on the commercialization, I always advise people to write a very brief vision of where you see yourself being at the end of phase three when you're fully commercialized, so that the panel reviewers can kind of grasp your story and go along with, read your story and understand where you're coming from. Great,
thank you.
Yeah, I'll reiterate, the review criteria are the litmus test, and they are applied to all applications in the same way.
Eric, the short answer is yes. I agree. We have basically an evaluator template that the evaluators have to go by. They have to answer the 3 criteria. They have to write very carefully their critiques of the proposals, and those evaluations of the proposals are reviewed at a higher level, not to tell the evaluator that, oh, we don't agree with your evaluation, but to tell them, to ensure that the evaluator's comments are appropriate, complete, and well-formed, and meet the standard for the evaluator's response to the proposal. So it is a very controlled process.
Wonderful, wonderful. So in terms of the evaluation process, you all sort of touched on it, right? The audience, depending on the agency, may be a little different, right? In the case of Larry within the Navy, you're really speaking to technical subject matter experts within the Navy, right? Relative to the particular problem they've identified. Genevieve and Melinda, you're speaking to a broader panel of experts, right? Who may be from academia, industry, or possibly like the agency. So when a applicant's considering this, one question is it possible to be too technical, right? So Larry, you mentioned like 70% of the proposal is technical. Is it possible to be too technical when they're applying, and how should they think about that? Let's start with Genevieve.
My short answer to that is yes, and particularly with the way that we administer our review process. As you mentioned, we do have reviewers from a variety of technical backgrounds, and so we do recommend make sure that you are providing enough information that we can evaluate the scientific and technical merit, but you don't want to get too jargony. You don't want to get too much in the weeds because it's being evaluated from a number of different perspectives, and they're not all going to be deep technical experts in a given area.
Great. All right, Melinda?
Yeah, it is possible to be too technical if that takes up, Eric referred to, each agency has its limit on the number of pages for your proposal, and also limits on, margins and, font size and all that. And, while that might seem not that important, it can actually knock you out and not allow you to get to panel. So it is important to pay attention to those things. But as far as technical goes, they're set within your proposal. There are several, they want a work plan. They're asking for technical objectives. They want responsiveness to USDA program priorities. So there's a number of categories that again are right within the RFA. And so it's important to address all of those. The technical part, your proof of concept, is going to take the majority of it, but you want to make sure you include all of these areas because it will be noticed by the panel if you're missing some of those areas.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that as long as you don't, somehow compromise the other portions of your proposal, that no, it is not possible in a Navy solicitation to be too technical. Let me caveat that with if you are writing a proposal and let me give you an example. Let's say we have a topic that wants higher pixel count cameras in the infrared in an infrared band, and you have it and you write on that proposal and you say, look, we can make smaller pixels, but there is a limit to this because if you get below a certain size, the noise increases dramatically. Explain that to me in the proposal. I may very well have an expert on, say, infrared imaging as an evaluator, but they may not understand that particular subtle key point. We expect the companies to know more than we do when they propose on these topics. And so they would point out, look, we can go down to this, this 4 micron pixel or whatever it is, but the problem is the noise goes up. So here's our solution for getting around that. That is a technical argument where they show me what the technical argument is and then explain to me why it's important for my application. We go to great lengths in our topics to explain what it is why we need the technology. Okay, and then the company can very often come along and say, well, here's what you've overlooked in your topic. Here's a key point that is very far down in the weeds technically that we want to make. And we actually appreciate that. Okay.
Wonderful, thank you for that. So one question from the audience here. And it's something that comes up, especially with new applicants to the program. And I think it's relevant given the conversation we've been having about the technical aspects of your proposal. Okay. So they're really asking if within their business, they don't really have personnel with, say, advanced degrees, let's say a STEM-based PhD, as an example, would that impact their proposal? And I will add to that, what are ways, if it could impact it, they can mitigate that within the construction of their proposal or their team? I think do I have a volunteer for this one?
Eric, let me see if I understand the question. The question is, what happens if there's a weakness on the strength of the proposing team?
Well,
that they do not have a specific expertise in the area that's requested in the topic?
I'll ask it this way. Is it a weakness if their team does not have a PhD with, say, a STEM degree when they're applying to the program? I think that's how I would phrase it, right? If they don't have advanced degrees in STEM areas as a part of their team, would that be perceived as a weakness?
Do you want
I
to
would
go, Larry?
say, oh, go ahead, Melinda.
I think anyone is welcome to apply for an SBIR Sttr. If you don't have the degree you feel like you should have, I mean, that's one of the roles that consultants play and subcontractors. So for instance, hypothetically, if you're a producer and you come up with maybe some better machinery for a certain crop, you can go to your local university and talk to them about developing a research project for it and work closely with them as consultants. And that, that is, that can become the rationale for why you have the expertise on the team.
Very nice. All right. Let's say, Larry, Genevieve, would you like to add anything to that?
I'll say that it is incumbent, if you have a team member that is not a specialist in the area and you're proposing on a highly technical topic, it's incumbent on the proposer to demonstrate in the proposal that that person has somehow attained the experience and the knowledge that's necessary to execute what's proposed. Let me put it that way.
That's a great way to put it. I think it doesn't, there are different ways to gain experience and knowledge. It doesn't have to be a PhD in a STEM area, but demonstrating that you have that knowledge and expertise is key.
Great, wonderful. We've touched on that a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about feedback, right? So typically annually across the SBIR, Sdtr programs across the agencies, the phase 1 win rate is around usually 15 to 18%. So it's a very competitive process. If a applicant is unsuccessful, can you speak about the mechanisms you all use to either provide feedback, how they can request feedback, and how they can use that sort of as they go forward, considering applying it for the future? I think I'll start with Genevieve, then Melinda, then Larry.
Yeah, absolutely. So we provide scores in each of the criteria and full reviewer comments anonymized for all of the applications. And that is all the applications that make it through the eligibility and the compliance part of it. So make sure if you're putting in all the effort that you're at least meeting those minimum requirements so that you can get that feedback, because if you don't meet the minimum eligibility, it doesn't get to go through the full review process. I think one recommendation that I have, that when you're looking at those scores and responses, make sure you're kind of comparing the comments and the scores, because sometimes maybe a weakness is not reflected in a comment or not specifically pulled out in a comment, but you can see that there's room for improvement in that given score. Applicants also have an opportunity to schedule a follow-up meeting or conversation with the SBIR program as well.
We're very similar to Noaa in that process. And so, I really don't, I honestly don't have anything else to add. Genevieve summed it up very well. So it's the same for USDA.
I'd say we're also the same. Every company, in fact, I think the companies that even win the award can request an anonymous debrief where the comments from the evaluators are shared with them.
Wonderful, wonderful. Real quick, there is a general question in terms of principal investigator initiated projects, right? So I believe USDA and Noaa, correct me if I'm wrong, but you all do accept principal investigator initiated topics. The question is, does DoD accept them? So I will frame it this way: does the Navy accept principal investigator initiated topics?
So you're talking about an unsolicited, what I'd call an unsolicited proposal for something that I did not come up with myself.
Correct.
I'm going to say no. The short answer is no. We don't do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So for the audience, some of the mission agencies like the Department of Defense, NASA, since a lot of times there may be the opportunity for them to procure this technology, utilize this technology and transition it, they usually do stick to what they're defining as the problem sets. I will note with Department of Defense, the Air Force, they do have what they call their open topics. So you can always look towards their BA with the open topics. They give you the technology areas, and then you can propose solutions you may have within there. In terms of I guess this could be fairly quick. Does any of your agencies provide any type of proposal templates or examples to companies that they can sort of use as a guide? All right, let's go Melinda, Genevieve, and Larry.
Sorry to be a broken record, but the guide really is within the RFA. Again, just make it searchable. The easiest way it is for you, and you put in some key terms for whatever you're looking for, and there you will find instructions for whatever you're looking for. And could I veer off really quickly and just add something? I just Genevieve referred to it earlier, but I just do want to add a caution about following those basic guidelines for page limits and attaching all the documents and formatting, because last year we had almost 700 applications, and we do an administrative review to make sure that they all meet those criteria. And after the administrative review, only 526 of them went to panel. And it's just because and I just wanted an opportunity to say that, because there is a lot of work involved in these applications. And if you're, missing a document, or you don't have the right format for the document, or your margins are off, you can be knocked out. So thank you for letting me veer off.
No problem. Let's say, Genevieve, do you all have any proposal templates or guidelines like that?
Thank you for the reminder. I forgot the original question. I will reiterate what Melinda said, that the people often probably don't think of it, but the NOFO, the RFA, really is the template itself. It is providing, at least in ours, it's got all the sections laid out and a description of kind of questions that we're looking to answers for in each of those sections. We are working on developing further materials, and a potential actual template application may be a part of that. But in the meantime, the NOFO itself really is that template.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I'll add other than one problem where we have seen, other than page limits and things like that, is companies not submitting the document. They're all electronically uploaded. And if they miss that electronic upload deadline, or they upload the wrong document in the wrong place, there's nothing we can do about it as the evaluators. It is automatically disqualified. If you don't get it in properly, you can't call me, and I can't undo those. Okay.
Thanks for sharing that. One question that came up from the audience is about how confidential information, so say proprietary information that may be included within a proposal, how that's treated and reviewed as opposed to the non-confidential parts of the proposal. So if Larry, we'll start with you. You can speak about it from a government perspective, since it's only government reviewers. And then Genevieve and Melinda, you can talk about that peer review process, because it may be a larger concern with the external peer review participants in the evaluation. So we'll go Larry, Genevieve, then Melinda.
Certainly. So we're very particular about proprietary information in proposals, or even in the course of execution of an SBIR project. We expect the SBIR to generate new innovation, and that could be based on proprietary work, new innovation based on new research in the area that's described in the topic. And when that is reported to us, it is treated with SBIR data rights by the Navy. First of all, anything that's conveyed in the proposals that are submitted against our solicitation is held strictly confidential. Okay, by law, there's only a few ways I can get myself thrown out of the Navy, and that's a security violation, or revealing a company's privileged information. Those are the two big no-nos. Okay, and everybody that evaluates knows that. I don't think, my opinion is, you don't need to include a great deal of proprietary information in a proposal. It's a proposal. You can tell me, we have a technology that does this. You don't have to, already as a starting point, as a launching point into the new work that you're proposing to do. I don't necessarily need to know what the ingredients in that secret sauce are. I just need to know that you understand how to make the secret sauce, and that using this SBIR project, you're going to make that SBIR sauce to solve my problem I describe in the proposal. So I don't really want to see too much proprietary information, honestly. What you develop during the SBIR becomes protected by SBIR data rights.
Wonderful. Genevieve?
I think similarly, all the information in the applications is protected. We do have external reviewers, and for those reviewers, we do have a conflict of interest process to make sure that there aren't any conflicts, and all reviewers are certifying for every application that they review that they don't have a conflict of interest with the proposal or anyone that's included in the proposal.
Melinda?
Yeah, it's similar to Noaa. There's a conflict of interest process, and anyone who has a conflict of interest with a certain proposal will not be even on the panel, will not be in the virtual room for that discussion of that proposal. The panels take this very seriously, and there's no problem with keeping information confidential. I'm not aware of any problems we've had with that. I will say that for USDA, we do require kind of an explicit detailed description of the research. We do need to know what, in a lot of detail, what your proposal is, what your plan is, what your scientific innovation is.
Right. All right. So this next one is actually going to just be for Larry, because right now the Navy has an Sdtr program. Melinda, USDA, you all will be coming on board fiscal year 23. Great. But Larry, is there any difference in the review criteria or the process for a Sttr? So a small business technology transfer research program that requires a small business to partner with a research institution versus the SBIR program?
Okay, yeah, that's actually a very relevant question. We do have an Sttr program, and we've had one for as long as I've been involved in this, and there are differences. First of all, there's a difference when I write the topic. I am permitted to treat Sttr topics as more researchy. In my SBIR topics, we expect some sort of prototype to be developed, and at some point, there has to be a path for that prototype to at least conceivably make it into a Navy system. Okay, so it needs to be a little more direct. I'm given more leeway on my Sttr topics, but here's one of the key differences in SBIR and Sttr. I'm in the Department of Defense. SBIR topics are almost always ITAR controlled. Okay, and that is that's something we don't have time to go in here today, and it's a very complex topic. But Sttr topics, because they involve the participation of a research institute, typically a university, almost always a university, cannot be ITAR controlled. Okay, and that is the ITAR control is a requirement on the company that's executing the project under contract to the government to control that information and control that technology from being inadvertently exported overseas. Okay, and there's a lot of subtleties to that. Sttr removes those requirements, and it basically sort of frees up their hands to do research and not worry about crossing those ITAR. And if anybody doesn't know what ITAR is, it's easy to look up. It's international trafficking and arms regulations requirements.
Yes, thank you for that. Just for the audience, I will encourage you all to understand ITAR if you're going to be working with certain technologies, especially if they're with some of the mission agencies within DoD or possibly NASA. But fundamentally, what it does is it identifies different technologies and then restricts who can work on them based on their country of origin, as well as if you can sell that or transfer that knowledge or technology to certain countries. So at a high level, that's what ITAR is. I think one key I will note on ITAR is that often these will be identified within the solicitations, within the topics, right? They will say, hey, we believe this technology may be ITAR restricted. So as we start to wrap up real quick, let's go around and just say, give one or two of some of the bigger, pitfalls or roadblocks you see when companies are proposing to the program. So I will go Melinda, Genevieve, then Larry.
I would say the biggest pitfalls are, again, not following the RFA and leaving out vital documents, or not attaching them, or thinking that you've attached them in grants.gov and you haven't. So being very careful about that and making sure that's done. Making sure that you have that, your proposal is really important, in making sure you look in the RFA and do, I think there's about 8 points to the proposal, and making sure you're addressing all of those. They aren't all of equal length and by any means, but make sure you touch upon each of them, with the bulk of that being the technical portion of it, your proof of concept. And then, following the rest of the guidelines and the RFA, those are the things. And, again, having those letters of support is really important. And the panel usually do notice if you do not have letters of support. So having, there's no standard of the number of letters of support you need, but somewhere maybe between 2 and 4 letters of support would be great.
Thank you. Genevieve?
Yeah, I'll echo ditto everything that Melinda said. Just make sure you're following the instructions and addressing all the criteria. I think my other point, I might be even stealing this from Melinda from a recent event, but just also make sure that you're writing a readable proposal, that it is not so technical, or it flows. If you have someone outside of your organization, or at least outside of your head, read through your proposal, it can be really helpful in just making sure that you're overall conveying the message that you're trying to convey.
Larry?
Okay, so Eric, I'm gonna kind of add some stuff in here, because I certainly agree with everything that Melinda and Genevieve have said. Okay, but the topic here today was in the mind of the evaluator, right? Okay, so I can tell you, as an evaluator and as the guy who writes the topic and then recruits the evaluators, what I'm thinking from the very beginning when I start writing the topic, and what I try to get the evaluators to focus on. And it is this: when we're evaluating phase 1 proposals, we're always conscious of the fact that my goal is to get to the end of the phase 1 and we typically only award 2 phase 1 contracts, sometimes 3. Okay, but when we get to the end of phase 1, what I want to be able to do is this: I want to be able to have a phase 2 down select that is clear and clean, and that when we're done with it, I sleep well at night. Okay, so let me give you an example here. I've had evaluators come to me and say, Larry, we're down to 3 proposals. Okay, and we can't decide. How do we decide on this? We got 3 pretty compelling proposals, and I'll say the first 2 proposals, or by chance any 2 of them, fairly similar in their approach or in the type of technology, the type of technical solution they're proposing. And almost invariably, the evaluators will say, yeah, 2 of them are kind of along the same lines. The third one is very compelling. It's more risky, so we don't know what to do. And I'll say, can you choose between, if you just had the 2 proposals that are fairly close to each other, can you at least choose which one of those is superior? And they'll go, oh yeah, we can choose the best one of those 2. I said, then it's perfectly acceptable to me that you choose one of the approaches, the superior approach that is maybe a little less risky, a little more straightforward, and you choose the other proposal, which is also technically acceptable, very compelling, but maybe it's a higher risk. Now going into the phase 1, I have 2 completely different approaches to the problem that we've described, 2 things that I can distinguish between. And then when I get to the phase 2 down select, we can make a decision on that. Okay, the worst nightmare that I have as a portfolio manager of my SBIRs is my evaluators coming to me at the end of a phase 1 process and saying, we can't decide which proposal to take forward into phase 2. That's a problem, because that's where the real money is. And these companies by then have done a lot of work, and we want to be able to make a clear distinction. The other thing that's going on in my mind is so let me tell me if I'm running on too long here, but
I'll say, yeah, maybe another 30 seconds and then we'll.
okay. Don't make your proposal dependent on the government for success. So if the proposal says the first thing we're going to do in phase 1 is we're going to ask you, the government, for a lot of information about this particular system or the particular thing, or what you're really looking for, what I'm really looking for has been well described in the topic. And then and once we get into phase 1, then we'll figure out what you're looking for, and then we'll give you the solution from our portfolio of technologies that my company is good at. No, I'm not going to provide you any more information in very little information in phase 1 other than what is provided in the solicitation, in the topic, because I can't do it. Okay, don't make it dependent on me that you're successful. Tell me what you can do, and our evaluators will decide whether that's what we need. And they're actually pretty good at it.
Thanks for that, Larry. Okay, so we're gonna have to, I think we're on time. So is there one other quick point, or can we move on to Melinda?
Yeah, no, I don't want to take up all the time. I can always make another point, but anyway.
No, this is very helpful. So Melinda, yeah, your concluding thoughts?
Sure. I just wanted to say very quickly that for USDA, we have 10 topic areas, and each topic area is very broad, and that is purposeful. We cast, because of the nature of innovation, we can't anticipate what the innovations are. So we cast a wide net to bring in as many innovations as possible. And one thing I should have mentioned earlier, but I didn't, when we convene our peer review panels, we also add ad hoc reviewers. And one example of that is that for plant production and protection, which the biology part of that, we had someone who had a proposal that involved mushrooms, and they didn't have a mushroom expert on the panel. So they got an ad hoc mushroom reviewer to supplement the other 2 reviewers for that. So we really do try to find experts that match the proposals, and we go to quite a lot of trouble to do that. So I think that's just kind of all I wanted to say.
Wonderful, wonderful. Genevieve, Melinda, Larry, thank you all. I really appreciate it. Your insights during this panel. To the audience, thank you all for participating in America Seed Fund Week. I want to remind you that a number of agencies are going to be having their reverse pitches or the Ask Me Anything sessions, which is a great way to fully understand in more detail what they specifically do, how they specifically approach things. I encourage you all to sort of stick around and pop into those. Again, thank you all for participating today.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, everyone.
Quite welcome, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Nice meeting you guys.
Nice to meet you.